This is why I'm alive. It's kind of strange. I'm alive to make bread. In this chapter, we are going to be going over the basics, techniques, and fundamentals of mixing and kneading. We're talking about getting our ingredients, our flour, our water, our yeasts, our salt. We're talking about combining those ingredients in the right fashion so that you get a nice smooth dough with strong gluten development. The mixing process is very critical. We're also talking about kneading. Kneading is how we build more strength into the dough to make sure that we've got that gluten network that we need for fermentation to take place. Got some leaven here that's ready to go and mix. We're gonna be adding a little bit of yeast in there as well. We've got some salt. Going to be using some bread flour and some whole wheat flour to get a nice flavor balance there. Got my scale and my bowl, two of the most important tools. I'm gonna start off by adding my flours into the bowl. All right, got 500 grams of flour there. After adding each ingredient, it's very simple to just zero out your scale so that you don't have to do any math while you're going through this process. You're simply weighing each ingredient as you are putting them into the bowl. We're gonna add 300 grams of water. We're gonna add about a gram of some instant yeast here. I like to get that right into the flour. Instant yeast, as you've learned, it's very active, it works very quickly, and you can add it straight into the dry part of your ingredients. I'm also going to add the salt. The last thing I'm gonna be adding to this particular mix is some leaven. Using the instant yeast speeds up the timing so we can have some fresh bread in a few hours while also having the nice natural flavor components that sourdough offers. We're gonna go into the bowl just like this, nice and strong. Oop. If I'm using a pre-ferment, I always like to add that last because it gets your hands a little bit dirty, but I'm ready to mix immediately. Getting the water to absorb into that flour is very important in the mixing process. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of just use a squeezing technique here as I rotate the bowl. I always start in the middle, one hand at first. And because I've got the sourdough starter in there, it's one of the first things I wanna get incorporated. This mixing process, it's one of the most important processes of making bread. Start with one hand, keep one hand dry at first, and really get in there. When you use your hands, you're gonna be able to feel certain things that you might not feel with a machine mixing situation, because if there was too much water in here, I would immediately be able to tell. I could reach for some flour, add more, or the other way around. If I felt like it was too dry, I'd immediately feel that, and I would know I need to add a little bit more water. So we're using this squeezing technique here. And what I wanna do is essentially get the dry flour on the bottom of this bowl incorporated into the whole mixture. Sometimes I'll kind of poke like one finger through and just use it to you can see the bottom there. I'm just using my finger on the bottom to kind of get the flour from being caked onto the bowl. The dough is becoming a little bit more supple, a little less sticky. All right, we're not quite at the point where it won't stick to me because I'm still using my fingers to squeeze into the dough. I don't really want to tear it. I just want to squeeze it, get the ingredients incorporated. Once you're at this point here, there's not much dry flour in the bowl. This is a good time to get as much of the dough mixture off of your hand, back into the bowl, and then we're gonna move on to the kneading process. Our dough is here. We are gonna grab a little bit of extra flour in case we need for our work surface. All right, we're not necessarily gonna use the flour yet. We're gonna see how our dough is. I'm just gonna kind of pick at the dough. It is actually a little bit sticky, just a tiny bit sticky, so I will probably just literally give a tiny dusting to my work surface just to get started, all right? You don't wanna overwhelm it. So what I like to do is get my dough almost in this triangular shape where there's a point that's furthest away from me. We're gonna use our fingertips here and the palm of our hand, all right? Fingertips, they're gonna bring the top part, all right, meaning the furthest part away from me. We're gonna bring that part into the middle of our dough. And then we are going to put our fingers under that portion and use our palm to push forward, all right? So we're lifting up, we're pushing out, all right? I'm gonna keep the other hand over here to help rotate the dough. And what I'm looking for is I want my dough to not really stick to me or my work surface, so you can incrementally add a little bit of flour if that is the case. All right, so into the middle with the balls of your fingers. Those fingers go under and then you push out. Give it a little rotation. All right, you don't want to knead the same part of the dough over and over again. You have to let it rest after you give it a good knead. Rotate it so that it can kind of relax and you can knead that portion again. All right, into the middle and out. So we're just gonna work it just like this. All right, and as you're kneading, you're gonna start to see the dough kind of resist a little bit and pull away, all right? So I'm kneading here. It's kind of resisting. It's a little strong. You don't wanna over knead or tear your dough. So those are the signs to look for when your kneading process is almost complete. It doesn't take long, okay? In, rotate, and at this point, the reason it's moving up like that is because you've got a strong network of gluten developing, and they're really just kind of coming to life and strengthening and rising up. We're also seeing a little bit of air pocket developing there as I'm putting tension into this dough with the palm of my hands. All right? So at the end of this process, we are looking for a smooth surface just like this. We're looking for tension on the bottom. We want to put tension into the dough. We want something that's nice, strong, it's sturdy, it's bouncing all the way up. After this mixing and kneading process, our dough now needs to undergo a process called fermentation. So it is not ready to shape into our final loaf form yet. It needs to ferment, the gluten network needs to expand, air and gas need to kind of get involved, it needs to grow. We then need to divide and shape it into the desired bread shape that we want. And that usually occurs in a few hours. That's gonna be some good bread. I encourage y'all to make as much dough as you can when you bake, every week, every other week, every month, once a month, whenever it is that you are gonna decide to make some bread for your family. I encourage you to use these different techniques. Get your hands dirty in that dough, mix that dough, knead it. These are two very important parts of getting our ingredients together and developing a nice strong gluten network so that our bread can actually rise and undergo fermentation.